Ciao, everyone. Welcome on behalf of Dimensions in Travel. We are delighted to have you joining us for our journey to the Italian Riviera with TFL Tours. This is number 32 in our travel agency series of virtual events to amazing places on our planet. My name is Diana St. James, and I'm one of the owners of Dimensions in Travel, along with Jill Romano. We are so glad you're here. It's a gorgeous day outside today, and we were just chatting before you all joined us about how we can endure pretty much anything when the weather is gorgeous out. So I hope wherever you are, you've got a nice day as well, and you'll have a chance to get out for a walk in it. But until then, we are delighted to have you here for our virtual event. We love them. It's a great way to go somewhere right now until we can safely travel again. And we feel like they keep the spirit of travel alive in all of us. Before we get started, I want to let you know three things. We are recording this, so and we always record our events, so you'll be able to view them and share them with people afterwards. We'd like all of you to be in listen and video off mode in order to minimize distractions. And finally, we will be doing a Q&A at the end. So if any questions come up, please put them in the chat box down below, and we'll be sure to answer them at the end for you. We have two special guests joining us from TFL Tours today. They are going to take us to the Italian Riviera. It's a picturesque coastline on the northwestern part of Italy. Beautifully painted towns, a picturesque coastline. And we'll be going to Portofino, Santa Margherita, Ligurian, Camogli, which I'm sure they will pronounce it better than I can, and a beautiful abbey right on the coastline. And the region is known for its beaches, marinas, flavorful cuisine, especially the pesto, and hotels with stunning views. But first, I'd like to introduce my business partner, Jill Romano, and let her take it from here. Hi, Jill. Good morning.
Ciao, Diana. Good morning, everyone. So nice to have you all joining us today. I am delighted. It's my personal and professional honor to introduce you all to TFL Tours today. Our relationship started many years ago by way of an introduction to Federica Tucci by one of our guides in Florence. When she opened her own business in 2006, TFL Tours, they became our preferred on location for all of our customers' travel services in Italy. We use the term on location to refer to our preferred partners in country that provide a variety of services like private transfers, tailor-made custom touring, amongst many other services. They have direct contact with each of their suppliers, as well as they have hand-selected and know all of their guides and drivers personally. They work with us to select restaurants, villas, hotels, and touring to ensure you, our customer, have the vacation of your dreams. Truly, no one works harder and is more dedicated to their team than Federica. So it was no surprise to us that they were awarded the On Location Partner of the Year award by more than 800 agencies in North America in 2012, 14, 16, and 17, as well as the 2019 Outstanding Agency Support for On Locations. I would like to introduce you as well today to Alessandra. She is a wonderful guide. We all love to work with her, and we are so pleased to have her here from Italy today. We are in for a real treat as she takes us around the beautiful Italian Riviera. A little bit about Alessandra. She was born and raised in Milan. She worked and studied abroad, earning her degree in political science and international business before moving to the Italian Riviera in the 1980s. After working for a year as a cultural representative at the Epcot Center, she started thinking about tourism as a profession. So once she obtained her official government license, both as an international tour manager and tour guide, she started working with cruise passengers, giving tours in Italian, English, French, Spanish, and Portuguese these past 20 years. During the rest of the year, you might be wondering what she does with her time. Well, she is a teacher at the International School in Genoa, helping students learning Italian as a second language. As I said, she currently lives on the coast between Genoa and Portofino, enjoys reading, movies, and hiking with her rescue dog, Wendy, during her free time. So again, welcome to you both. We are so pleased to have you here today. And Alessandra, we are all looking forward to our tour of the Italian Riviera with you today. Thank you.
Federica, you want to say something? Or
oh, yes.
do I go?
Yes. Hello, buonasera. Better to say maybe buongiorno because it's evening for us, but it's daytime for you. Well, first of all, I would love to thank Jill and Diana for the wonderful presentation of myself, my agency, and my team. I'm really, really pleased to be here with you tonight for this Zoom meeting and this virtual event in Liguria with Alessandra. I'm pretty sure that some of you joined also our virtual tour at the beginning of January with Stefania in Lucca. It was a great success. It was beautiful. So these kind of Zoom meetings are really something that we love doing right now because, you know, we are at home. It has been a very tough year. Well, now I must say that I'm a little bit more positive because we start seeing the light at the end of the tunnel. Here in Italy, we're hearing lots of good things about US, about the fact that vaccination is going very well, and also the number of infections is going down. So it make me think that things will soon change and you will be able to come again to Italy and visit our beautiful country directly as we were doing before. So my dream is that COVID-19 is going to be over soon and you will be able to travel safely, happily. Today we're going with Alessandra to a part of Italy that I really, really love. If you ask me why, simply because of the atmosphere, which is unique. I love these little villages, the colors on a sunny day, like it is today, for example, in California, Jill and Diana told me before. When you have that kind of blue sky and blue sea, it's really kind of magic atmosphere, very relaxing area. But I think it's time now to hand it over to Alessandra, who's a wonderful guide, of course, with a fantastic personality, but she's also a very good friend of mine. I haven't seen her in a while because we can't travel much now, but I really hope that I will soon. Yes, I'm really sorry to Alessandra. I miss you, honestly. But I'm happy to be here tonight for this virtual tour, and I'm sure that you will really enjoy it too. Let's go to Portofino with Alessandra right now. Ciao.
Okay, thank you. Thank you very much and good morning. Buongiorno. As Federica said, we should say buonasera at this point because it's evening here. And once again, I'm Alessandra and I'm going to take you all to the Italian Riviera today. So I know it sounds exciting from the beginning because the minute I say the Italian Riviera, you just feel like you're sitting with your glass of wine, just enjoying the beautiful view and enjoying the sunset. And that's a little bit like that. That's why I chose this first picture of Portofino in the sunset to begin with, because this is sort of the best time that we like, especially in the summer, because it's cooling off and we sit around. This is an empty Portofino, actually. This is not the way it usually looks. We decided, well, actually, I decided, I take the responsibility of calling this little meeting with you the Italian Riviera, although we're going to talk about a relatively small part of the Italian Riviera, because it's better to say something more specifically about a relatively small area than talk about, you know, a lot of places and then you won't remember even what I said. So before we start our trip together, let me give you some important information, because we always, well, I'm sort of the old-fashioned way. I don't go on Google Maps. I always look at the real one, because you can really sort of understand a lot more if you look at the real map. And the first one I want to show you is where the region of Liguria is. We are in the northwestern part of Italy, and that's the green area. It's a relatively small region, but what I want you to have a look at is the shape of our region. It's a super small and narrow, especially one. We're sort of squeezed between the mountains and the sea. We have a little over 1,500,000 residents. And as you can see, I've written there, about 850,000 live in the province of Genoa, or as we call it now, the metropolitan city of Genoa. So the thing is that not only we are concentrated in the city, but we are really concentrated along the coast, because 97% of our territory is mountains and hills. So we all live in a strip of land that is just by the coast. Why do we call it the Italian Riviera? If in Italy, Riviera means by the sea, or better, by the water, because originally we were using the term Riviera for lakes and rivers more than sea. But we have 5,000 miles of coastline in Italy. So why don't we call everything a Riviera? Because it is sort of a specific region which included in the 19th century the French Riviera and the Italian Riviera, but it was the same, geographically it was the same. So on one side, on the western part, this is the border of France, and on the eastern part is the border with the region of Tuscany that I'm sure you've heard of. We have 4 provinces in the region of Liguria. The big one in the center is Genoa, and we're actually going to talk about this area. You see this peninsula sticking out from the coastline? That's called the Peninsula of Portofino, or as we call it here, the mountain of Portofino, although it's not really as high as a mountain, but is the only sort of square peninsula that sticks out from the coastline. The area of Imperia, which is the pink one here, is the one that is more similar to the French Côte d'Azur, because it's actually geographically the same thing. So we have larger sandy beaches. It's a totally different landscape. Savona is sort of in between, and then the area of what originally was the Riviera, which was this part of Imperia and the part we're going to talk about, is completely different. And again, we have here the province of La Spezia. This area I'm pointing at is the one that I'm sure you all know, because it's the area of the Cinque Terre that is now the most popular one. When I started working as a guide, everybody wanted to go to Portofino about 25 years ago, 25 years ago. And now everybody wants to go to the Cinque Terre. So things are changed very much. I just want to mention the city of Genoa. We didn't have, of course, time today to talk about Genoa, but Genoa is a beautiful city. It has the second biggest historical center in Italy after Rome. It's a medieval city. Is the story of the history of the Republic of Genoa. It's very well known, and so it has a lot to see. We don't have this time, but next time I hope we will have a chance to go a little bit into the beauties of the city of Genoa. And on this map, you can see how really we're squeezed, as I said, between the mountains and the sea. Here on this side, these are called these are the Alps, and they're called the Maritime Alps between us and France. And then more or less here, we start having the Apennines that are going down this way and over to the central part of Italy. The Apennines are the second highest mountains after the Alps. And here they run very, very close to the coast, in fact. And so this is why we have a very, very limited part that is flat, or not at all, because they're still sort of hilly. There is, for the very good hikers, a wonderful hike that starts from France and runs all the way to Tuscany. It's a very long one. People do it in a few days. You have to consider the whole region of Liguria is more or less 280 miles. but that's in terms of the highway. So climbing up, it's a little bit different. However, it's a beautiful, and it's been renewed, and there are a lot of new things and new parts that people can actually use on the mountains as they go from one side to the other. This is a very good view of the coast of the Gulf of Tigullio. That's the Gulf where Portofino and Santa Margherita are actually situated. And the Gulf of Tigullio is, you can see, if you look here, the first hills that you have over here, and then the peaks of the Apennines right over here and over here. This was a very clear day. Usually we get very, very clear days, more in the spring, in the fall than in the summer, because unfortunately this is a very green area, and we do get a little bit of humidity in the summer, so is not so clear. But when it is clear, you can clearly see all of the lines of the mountains, the lowest and the highest, and the peaks of the Apennines behind. Do you remember that square peninsula that I showed you? This is it. It's called, as I said, this is a map of the hiking trails, but it's very useful because you can have a look at this square peninsula. The only road that cuts it is the red one over here that goes from one side to the other. All of the rest, what you see over here, these are footpaths for hikers. So there's no road in the whole peninsula. The only red one that cuts it is very high. And then we have the little road that goes to Portofino, that is a small, narrow coastal road that goes from Santa Margherita to Portofino, and that's it. It doesn't continue anywhere. So what we're going to do together is actually taking a virtual trip from this side, from Camogli, which is actually up here. Whoops, sorry, I go back because I moved that, which is actually up here, and then go this way and around the peninsula on a boat, and then over to San Fruttuoso, and then around the other side into the Bay of Portofino, and then back up here to San Margherita. So this is actually the trip we're going to take together. So if you're ready, let's go. So I have put the first, image of Camogli, and you can see very well. You see this behind, just here over here. This is Genoa. This is the city of Genoa. This is how close it is. But at the same time, if you remember what I was showing you before, that is the shape of an arch of the region of Liguria. Here you can see directly on the other side, because the day was very bright, and so you were able to see the other coastline. So this will be we are on the eastern Riviera. This will be the western Riviera. Camogli has a relatively, for our standards, big beach, because on this side of the coast we do not have large sandy beaches. We only have rocks or pebbles or stones, but no large sandy beaches. The beautiful church that we have over here, and this part that I'm showing you, this one used to be in the medieval times an island, and people still call this area the island, although it's not an island anymore, because this group of houses over here, the green and the ones that are by the side, did not exist until about the 1500s. So this part was separated from the mainland that is over here on the sea. And so when it was dangerous, because in this area we very often had the pirates coming, the Saracens, as we call them, and people would be on the island, be safer on the island. You had a little fort over here and walls around it that doesn't exist anymore. And the original church that was built in the 12th century, this one is the 1600s. And so people would sort of pull up the bridge that would separate them from the mainland and be safe on the island. This is also a beautiful aerial view of the little port of Camogli on the other side in relation to the picture we just saw. Camogli is the very first natural port that you see or you meet when you sail from Genoa. So it was very important. Although this was the tiny one, we need to remember that we're talking about before the 10th century and all through the medieval times. So the people started to live on the island. This is the other side of the island. And if you look at buildings, you see how narrow they are. This is one, and the different colors we say is because the owner wanted to the sailors wanted to recognize their buildings when they were still away at sea, but that's only partly true. It's true because if you imagine all of this building all of the same color, it would have been very, very difficult. However, it was a matter of property, so each one had his own property painted in a different color. And so tiny apartments, a lot of people on a very small area, and this is why they all had very tiny apartments. This is what's left of the fortress, originally built before the 12th century, but what we see and what is left is the late 1400s. And the church was rebuilt in the 1600s with a much recent facade, but overlooking the sea. It's a beautiful inside. The color facades of Camogli are famous all over Italy. And on the facades, we have these decorations that reproduce fake stones and decorations around the shutters that are called with the French word the trompe l'œil, which means to cheat the eye or to fool the eye. And this is very, very typical of this area. We see it everywhere, including Portofino. This is the entrance of the port of Camogli, where we usually start our trip, either if we drive there or we take a boat. This is the first view that you get on Camogli, while on the other side, you see the promenade, which is basically over here by the beach. And there is also a main street, which is sort of up. Here is all pedestrian area, no cars at all. This is a beautiful picture of Camogli in the winter time. You can tell it's winter because, well, the sea is rough, and also there are not very many people on the beach. However, I just wanted to talk about the weather, because when we say historically, people start to come to the Italian Riviera in the 19th century, they would come here in the winter. These were winter resorts in a time where going to the south of Spain or the Canary Islands or other places or the Caribbean was way too far. The rich Europeans of Germany, England, and the Northern Europe in general would spend their winters here because the weather was so mild compared to the north of Europe. And we have temperatures, very pleasant temperatures. Well, not lately, but usually we should have. And it never really gets cold. So in the past, they would send people here from Russia, for instance. The Russian aristocracy had beautiful villas. They even built churches, and they would spend the winter month on the Riviera if they had tuberculosis or other diseases that could be cured with nice weather and by the sea. So the idea of going to the beach came much later, and in fact, it's after the 50s that people are flocking down to the Riviera to go to the beach. Before, it was just a matter of being there, walking around, enjoying the charming villages and nice life. This is the promenade. This is how it looks. The beautiful houses, as we have seen them on the other side where the fort was, all next to each other. Actually, until the very end of the 1800s, there was another row of houses over here where there's the beach right now, and it was destroyed to create the promenade, which is right here behind that. And the people were moved in these buildings that you see, in those buildings up here that look the same, but were built actually at the turn of the century. And so we finally had the promenade. Why? Because people wanted to be, they were there in the winter, they wanted cafes and restaurants by the water. And because of the fact that the pirates and the Saracens were around here, we didn't like the water. We were hating the water because that's where danger came from. So they sort of switched around the whole of the town, which was always behind, and started to be towards the front. So from Camogli, we're now leaving the town of Camogli and going and taking a boat that can be either private or public. And at this point, we're going to go towards San Fruttuoso. And this is the view that we're going to get once we get to San Fruttuoso. Because San Fruttuoso, that is this small abbey sort of in the middle of nowhere, can only be reached by sea or hiking on the hill. And that will be roughly about 2 hours from Camogli if you want to walk there. So going by boat will be so much better, and you'll get this beautiful view as you get there. The Abbey of San Fruttuoso was built more or less in 3 different times: the 10th century, the 13th century, and the 15th century, and 16th century partly. There were already monks before the 10th century here, and the monks were living in a much smaller abbey that was behind this one. Here you can have the beautiful view of the Abbey of San Fruttuoso. Apart from this, that is a restaurant. This is the original building. What is the original church? What is left of the original church is the bell tower, which dates before the 10th century. The original abbey, which is down here, and this part facing the sea that you can see from here is the part that was built in the 1300s. The little beach that is just in front didn't exist until 1915, where a huge landslide came down from the mountains and brought all of this stones and created the beach that we see now. The inside the abbey, you can actually visit it. This is the beautiful facade facing the sea. So the arcades that you see over here were originally built right on the water, so people could only get in by boat. They had the small boats and they could get in here, and then from there up some steps. So it was really isolated and safe. The relics of this San Fruttuoso were brought there around the 7th century, taking them away from Spain when it was invaded by the Arabs. And the legend says that in a dream, the Bishop of Tarragona in Spain, that was taking the ashes away towards Rome, saw this little monastery that was different before and decided to leave the ashes of San Fruttuoso over there. So from there on, pilgrims started to go and visit the abbey, and so it grew bigger and bigger through the centuries. Inside, there's a very nice part that is where the Doria family members are actually buried. The Doria family started to get involved with the abbey around the 13th century. They built parts of the abbey. They built the biggest one that we saw before facing the sea, this one that you see over here. And they, in exchange of this building, they wanted to bury their important people there. After a little while, they decided it was way too complicated to have all these people brought over from Genoa to there on a long boat trip, and so they decided to bury them in another church in Genoa. The style of this area where they buried the important people, and they were only buried from 1296 until about 1350s, is the typical style that you might have seen in Tuscany, and you might remember this black and white stripes that are very, very common in Tuscany and in this part of Liguria, with the exception that here we don't use a black marble, but we use slate and white marble. So the white marble comes from Tuscany, of course, but slate is very common in the inland of here. This is a beautiful view of what you see from where you are inside the abbey. Usually when we stop roughly about an hour in San Fruttuoso. We visit the abbey, and then we take another boat at that point, unless you're hikers. And we're coming from this part that you see over here. We're going to sail around like here and go around this very, very last point of the peninsula of Portofino. And inside this canal, that is where Portofino is. So this part is the last extreme point of the peninsula of Portofino, of which you can see. We saw it before on the map. And of course, we are getting to Portofino. This beautiful picture was taken from the fortress that we have in Portofino, and is called the Castle Brown, from the name of the Englishman that bought the ancient fortress in the 1860s and turned it into his private home. He was the British consul in Genoa, and he decided that in his retirement years, he would spend the rest of his time on the Italian Riviera, and especially in Portofino, that he really, really loved. So you can see actually from here how you get into that canal that I showed you before. And once again, Portofino is the second natural port coming from Genoa. The first one is Camogli, as we mentioned, and this is the second one. So this is the importance of Portofino in the past. Portofino comes from the Latin Portus Delphini, the port of the dolphins. And since the Roman times, it has been a very important natural port. So even when the sea is very rough, like what we saw in Camogli before, it's always pretty calm over here because it's so sheltered. This part, the part that we saw before of the peninsula, this part really closes up the entrance of the fort. And so you can understand in the Roman times and until the medieval times, when the navigation were always on the coastline, how important it was to have a natural port over here. That's a picture of the Brown Castle. When Mr. Brown built the fortress that was not in a good shape, he decided to build the terrace that you see over here, where you have the big tree. And with the stones of this terrace, that of course did not exist before, he built the round tower to the right. And so it looks like a castle, but if you look at the pictures before, it was completely different. It was really a square fortress, very useful, because from the top of that point, of that part of the hill, you can have an incredible view on both sides. It's now open to the public, so you can visit that. And from the terrace, it has the most spectacular view you can think of. Portofino started to become popular right after World War II, when the Americans were here. They went back to the States after the war. They talked about the charming and beautiful village of Portofino. And so in the 50s and the 60s, Portofino was the place to be. We have a picture here of Clark Gable here, and also of a very famous British actor, Rex Harrison, who bought and built a villa in Portofino. He lived here for a while, or for a beach house, and this is, I think, his third wife. He had 6, but this is the third one, the one who actually lived with him in the beautiful villa of Portofino. He's the one that really spread the word about how beautiful Portofino was in the UK and in Europe, while, you know, I can name a lot of actors and important people and the VIPs of the time that spent some time in Portofino. If you look at this picture, you can see this, I think, was 53 or 54. You can see that the facades of the buildings were, you could barely see the different colors, and they were repainted, of course, but the structure is still the same. So when they tell you Portofino is exactly the same as it was in the 30s, no, it's not. It's been restored, but it's still, nothing could be built here after 1935, when the park of Portofino was created. And this is an old picture. You can see from the beach how really that part of the castle closes up the bay, and the place, as is now called the Piazzetta, where you get your coffees and you sit at your restaurants, was actually only the space to pull up the fishing boats. Up here, if you have a look at this beautiful picture, you can see the Splendido Hotel. This is the best hotel of the area. Super well known all over the world. The Splendido Hotel is the place to be. This is a picture that shows you the different lights. Sometimes in the summer, it tends to be like this. This is to honor Federica, who took it with me one day. These are the yachts that are usually in the port of Portofino in the summer. The bigger ones are outside because they can't fit in. And so it's full of super big yachts all the time. And this picture shows you, once again, the different colors and the trompe-l'oeil and what we were mentioning about the structure of the building. The parish church of Portofino is the Church of San Martino, which you see over here on the top right side, while the church where we all go to, we saw it before, is the Church of St. George, from which you get a beautiful, beautiful view of, let's see if I have a picture before that was shown you. There's still, there it is. This is the Church of St. George, exactly right here at the beginning. It was destroyed, unfortunately, during World War II, so it was rebuilt. It's not an original building, but it's like a 5 minutes to go up there, but you still can enjoy an incredible view. And though we're gonna sail out of Portofino once again, and this time we're gonna go towards more to the east, and that's Santa Margherita. The bad news is that it's not the Santa Margherita of the Pinot Grigio. It's another Santa Margherita. It's not either one of the pizza, but it's a beautiful place. A lot of people really like Santa Margherita more than Portofino. Portofino is beautiful to be there for a couple of hours, for dinner, for a walk, for a hike. But the place to be is actually Santa Margherita. It has two parts of the town. This is the part coming from the sea to your left. Let's say this is the port area. Plenty of nice restaurants over here. And then you have the beautiful church, Baroque church of St. James on top of the hill. The side is always the same, beautiful old buildings with colored facade. And then you have the other side with the little fortress. Every little town has a fortress because we have to defend ourselves from the pirates. And the beautiful Villa Durazzo, a villa that was built by the Durazzo family in the 16th century, but then used as a hotel for many years. And in the end, it was became a public property. And now it can be visited as well. You can have your birthday party there, for instance. And a lot of different levels of hotels and restaurants and a little trattoria. There's a much wider choice in Santa Margherita. And it's maybe the only place in this area that is considered a little bit more for the young people. The Italian Riviera is not a place for young people. There's no clubs, no places, but Santa Margherita is the very posh. All the rich Milanese go to Santa Margherita. And the last one is Rapallo. It wasn't really on the map that I showed you before, but from this picture, you can see that Portofino is then where we said before, right on the top. Portofino is in here, Santa Margherita is right here, and this is the port of Rapallo. Rapallo is much bigger. To give you an idea of the size, well, the residents don't really give you an idea because Portofino has about 400 residents right now, and Santa Margherita about 4,000, and Rapallo 30,000. So it's basically already a town. It's very convenient if you plan to travel a little while you are in the Riviera, because you have a big train station where all the fast trains stop. If you want to go to Florence, to Tuscany, to Rome, it's very convenient for that reason. But the promenade is very nice as well. And I'm gonna finish with just a couple of information about food in our area. Although a lot of people come into the region of Liguria and they really want to eat fish and seafood in general, most of the times I need to remind them that the Ligurian cuisine is almost always a vegetarian one, because in the past we didn't have space for animals. So we only had a hard time cultivating the land in the mountains. But our typical food is this, what you see here is sort of vegetable quiche, as we call them, or pies with the different vegetables according to the season, with some kind of cheese that was originally goat cheese. Our typical food is the pasta. This is the trofia, that's the typical one up here, with the pesto sauce. And the pesto sauce has basil, garlic, cheese, and olive oil, of course. And let's not forget the focaccia bread that everybody loves. Is our local bread, but it's salty and with olive oil on top. Everybody likes focaccia bread. We eat it at breakfast most of the time, even with our cappuccino. And it used to be a sort of a hard bread that the sailors would bring on their ships, and that was salted to last, of course, at sea, and then they will put in olive oil on top. Now it's freshly baked every day in the bakeries. And you're not a real Ligurian until you have focaccia for breakfast. So, and this is it. So with a arrivederci, as we say, I just want to remind you that we just saw a very small part of this part of the Eastern Riviera. There are a lot of towns around that are just as nice, not as popular, not as crowded. And so just, ask Jill and Diane about them. And we will be in touch just in case you have been here already. I'm sure it was a pleasure to see that again, but you have a lot of options according to what type of holiday you want to have. Do you have any questions?
First of all, before we get into questions, thank you so much, Alessandra. That was incredible. I am so hungry now for lunchtime, and you've given me a great idea for where to have my birthday party, if I can ever travel to Santa Margherita. That sounds incredible. Well, Jill, do you want to see if we've got any questions?
Sure, I would be happy to. So the first question, Alessandra, is, are there abbeys at the abbey? Do they still have monks? And I think the question might be referring to San Fruttuoso.
To San Fruttuoso? No, the answer is no. Actually, it was so isolated and so far away that already the monks had decided to leave the abbey in the 1400s. And in fact, a new abbey was built, and you can see very well when you sail from Santa Margherita to Portofino, is the Abbey of La Cervara, and the monks moved there. So the abbey was abandoned for many, many centuries until a big restoration that occurred in the first in the 1930s, but mainly in the 1980s.
Thank you so much. And I so enjoyed it. It was a little trip back in time for me. It was about 20 something years ago when I did a hiking trip through that area and looked at your beautiful picture in the sunshine of San Fruttuoso. And I remember arriving by boat into the pouring rain and thinking, how quickly can I get shelter and get out of this? But it was so beautiful to see. And the food, like Diana said, I'm looking at my watch because it's lunchtime here and we're all getting hungry, I'm sure. We talked a lot about the various forms of transportation, and I just wanted to share with everyone that your Dimensions in travel advisor would be happy to chat with you about the various options that you have for taking the trains and boats and that kind of thing. But what we truly recommend is working with TFL Tours and a fabulous guide like Alessandra and coordinating all of that for you in advance. So you don't have to think about it. It's all taken care of in advance for you. So I wanted to just address that.
As we say, the logistics sometimes is a little bit more complicated here than in other areas because of the fact that we switch from a train, because we have to take the train sometime, like in the Cinque Terre, cars and boats, or small boats, big boats. And so to coordinate this is not that easy.
Exactly.
Because you need to know, and the train stations, of course, the train is in the back because it can't run under the sea, so it's up in the hills, and so it's not easy. So the logistics is important, and this is a good part of our job, is to still make people enjoy their travels in between one and the other, as we have all these different type of transportation. But we have always time to talk about things while we travel from one place to another.
Exactly. Well, those are the only questions that we have today, which I think means you did a fabulous job of telling us all about the destination and sharing some of the highlights. The images were beautiful, and I feel like we've all had a little journey to Italy today, and to the Italian Riviera. So thank you so much, Alessandra, and thank you so much, Federica.
Thank you. Grazie mille for having me. I hope to see you all again very soon.
Yes. We do too.
Absolutely.
We hope to see you in Italy soon.
Yes.
Bye-bye.
Thank you,
Federica.
Alessandro. Ciao.
Ciao, everybody.
Grazie. Ciao.
Bye. Come to see me.